position that, I mean, I don't have that kind of creative decision, but it's truly amazing to me that, to maybe I've been, maybe it's too late in my life to come up to this information, which I should have known all along, which was you can definitely, be able to be part of something and be able to define what you do with that something.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's too late. Right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything is possible in life as long as you're alive.
Love it. Wonderful. All right, so it's 6:45. Definitely don't think, I don't know if we have anybody from Signature. Alex, Ed, thanks for joining us. Everybody else, I know personally, and I can see you guys on the webcam. We've had in the past other events where we had unusual people that show up in the webcam a little bit later, so just be aware of that. We're going to be going live in a second. Jeremy and Esteban and Victoria, please help me out if there's anything unusual coming out from everybody else. This is going to be an event where I want everybody's opinion. I definitely want even more. So if you can accept everybody more, just be aware of the fact that if there's someone that has a background noise that we can't, is too noisy, like Ed has said he has, no problem. I think it sounds good to be able to chat. We're here in chat. Help me out if there's something in chat that I miss. I do want to be inclusive. We have the subscription, the transcripts going on right now, which I love. I feel like $1 million when doing it. But let's get into it. If you don't mind, I'm going to start presenting. Everybody okay with that? Great. Appreciate that. So let's see. Well, let's do it here. Oh my, nice group. All right, that is the, oh my God, what is going on here? Why can I not switch? What professionalism, what amazing things. I'm going to open up a new type and I'm going to go slides.floridajs.com. You can as well, should you wish to. So this is a little bit, can we trust open source? And we're going to talk a little bit about open source. What has this happened lately? It is something that a lot of people have been talking about lately. It's pretty revolutionary, and it is change our world. We'll talk about how to fake your data, why it is that we faked our data. If you don't know how, then you haven't had a development environment that you had to strip all the production data from and try to fill in some fake some information. That's where I will talk about fake information. Truly, today's conversation is more about open source, and it will be an open conversation to everybody is in there. FloridaJS is around. We have a leadership. Leadership is changing, and we'll talk a little bit about this. I don't know, Jeremy, after I get prepared and all that, we can talk about this. But there is a change coming soon. If you ever see yourself like thank you, Victoria, that you know very well, that where Meetup was down. I was talking to Victoria and the team at Boca Code, the amazing team at Boca Code, and everything they do to make developers into real developers. When I told them go to a website, they were adamant, they were happy, they went to the website, and meetup.com is down. If that ever happens, check out FloridaJS.com. We are always live, and we always have the latest videos there at the very bottom available, which are on YouTube, but they're there all the time if you wish to. FloridaJS.com is a combination of different things. Check out the other things. Jeremy, do you want to talk about the different parts of this? Or I guess I should get used to talking this part. Jeremy, help me out with some of these stuff that we have in here. No. We'll be all right.
I got to find the mute button.
No problem.
One last time for old time's sake, for sure.
I love it.
If you guys aren't aware of, there's a Florida Tech Hub South Florida, I think is the now official name of it. There's a Slack channel there that you all should be interested in. More specifically, there's 3 channels. There's a developers channel. If you want to get into the community and connect with other developers out there, Dev channel is where we all hang out. If you have a question, feel free to post it up there. I guarantee you there's a subject matter expert that is willing to help you out. And if you notice someone asking a question you may be able to help out with, feel free to answer it. It's a great way to give back to the community. There's an events channel. that has all of the events going on. It used to be just Palm Beach, but now it's all of South Florida. So, we range from Palm Beach County down to Miami-Dade County, and all of the events are listed in there. If you're looking for a new job, Gigs Hiring is the place to be. Tech Hub South Florida is a nonprofit organization dedicated to building South Florida into a tech hub. So it's a member-driven organization with all the tech companies in South Florida. So if you're looking, that's the place that they go to post, and you can connect. If you want to connect with us, we are always, always, always looking for speakers. If you are in the middle of learning something, that is the best time to come out and give a talk about it, because not only will it help solidify the knowledge in your brain, because you have to figure out how to teach it, but you might help someone else out who's struggling with the same things that you're going through. So please reach out to Damian or myself to set up a talk. We'd love to have you. All right, next is Code Palm Beach. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching kids to code. It's been a while since I said that. We host multiple events a month at various locations and online. We're always looking for volunteers for both mentors in our sessions or open source projects. If you want to find out more about that, please check out codepalmbeach.org or reach out to myself, and I will point you in the right directions. Now the awkward silence until Damian unmutes.
What's the best way to reach out to you, Gabriel?
The Slack. The Slack is the best way to reach out to me. I'm at Jermbo.
Just a reminder, I totally thank you, Jeremy. I totally forgot where the unmute myself is because I was sharing my screen. And also, we're not combining, but at this moment, because I thought it was a pretty open discussion, we've invited the FLA.net group, the biggest, oldest .NET group in probably for forever, since they started in 2001. I'm pretty sure they started even before .NET. They were the ASP or the Microsoft group that has been invited over. So if you've joined from that group, thank you very much. If you also belong to that group and you're interested in anything Microsoft and web related, I now am the organizer of both groups. So if you don't see it here, my apologies. I forgot to put it up there. I think this is a mighty good. Should we start with what happened, Jeremy? You want to talk, or should we put it at the end?
Well, I mean, we talk about it. So we've you make it sound like such a big conspiracy or anything like that.
I apologize.
What's happening is I'm stepping down as organizer. Damian and I have been co-organizing this for a while. And I'm officially stepping down to pursue other commitments. So the FloridaJS, as the slide talks about, was born of 3 different groups kind of merging together. And since I have moved out of the South Florida area, it's been a little bit of a struggle for me to keep up with all the community events and things going on down there. So it makes more sense to nominate Damian and promote him to organizer, because he's been rocking it when I'm not here, and he's going to continue to rock it after I'm gone. So this isn't a goodbye, is more of I'll see you in a little bit. I need a little bit of a break and a little bit of a sabbatical, and you're in good hands with Damian, as you've known before. So nothing's changing on that end.
Thank you, Jeremy. So all right, so that's it. I apologize. Thank you very much for that. So let's get to the presentation. I want to do it as quickly as possible. Really, one more time, I do want to keep it open. I have a couple of different slides. I'm just going to go right through them and then open the floor up, for the future conversations as well. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. For after the presentations, who am I? Hey, Montero, you all know it. Now I'm officially a developer, mentor, and trainee at SRT Labs. And here to, I love JavaScript, all that. Can we trust open source? Okay, so we have really two subjects. Can we trust open source and Faker? And we'll talk more about open source. So can we trust open source? No, we can't. There's too many people that are having some problems. End of story. Let's continue on, because we already took care of that subject. Thank you very much for coming. How can we fake the data? Okay, so we can just grab faker.com and, oh, god damn it. Just went to github.com on Faker to show you guys how to do it, show you guys the code, npm install, or NuGet install for the .NET group. And God, again, this guy, Faker.com, if you go there, your project will not give you all the fake data to essentially pretend to have a legitimate number of users in your development environment so that you don't copy production data. That's why we do the faking. So this is one of the reasons why we should have that conversation, right? Even if we go to, you're like, well, no, it's npm, it's the repository. It's not true that there's going to be joining somebody else. It's not true that we're going to have this person on npm, someone. There's been different situations where the npm project has been attacked, things like that. What could we do? And here's what the conversation is about. Even if you go to GitHub or you keep track of it, what can we do to take care of this? What can we do, since we are essentially thinking of our product as all this amazing things, from Google to Facebook to all these things, and then little project and random person in Nebraska has been thankfully maintaining since 2003. That's what's truly holding up our Lego pieces of projects. And there is something wrong, right? Because not only do we have examples of people that decide they're going to use their project, their information to get in front of everybody else, but we're also going to go ahead and see something like Color.js. And Color.js, they had a small bug, and next thing you know, everybody that's using Color.js, which colors your terminal and for CLI products that you've seen before, now all of a sudden they have an infinite loop. And so every single project that just wanted to make some interesting colors come in now has nothing. So let's have that open conversation. So that's really much it as far as the presentation. By the way, if you ever want to know what happened to Faker.js, they literally have removed everything. You cannot get it, but if you go to FakerJS.dev, you will be able to. They've forked the repository. That's also the beauty of open source. So if something does happen to a particular package, someone decides not to no longer to take care of it, to erase everything. As you can see, there's a single commit for this repo that's been around since 2014, and everybody's using it. There's over 2.9 million weekly downloads, and there's one repo.
By the way, Damian, one of my friends went to high school with Aaron Schwartz. Aaron Schwartz is
Yes.
the original guy, or
no. So Aaron Schwartz isn't. So the actual it's Marek, and
right.
So
that guy went. He went. One of my former mentees went to high school with him, and he's like, this guy was such an asshole. And he was so upset that this was the guy who made FakerJS, because FakerJS is awesome. But he's like, oh, I hate that it's this jerk. And so now it's coming out of his hands. My former mentee, Greg, is probably, glowing with joy.
Ecstatic. Absolutely. So so we are not happy with this particular open source person, or this open source person puts in a bug by mistake. What do? We expect somebody to take it over. We expect this group. If you go to FakerJS.dev, you'll see a website. It's a nice professional looking website that has some great information to do with how to fake it and how to use it, and it looks very professional and it's great, but it's not the official one. It's a fork of the official one. So, like the old saying, if schools suck, are we supposed to rely on a billionaire to fix it? No, right? We have to figure out what is it that we can do so that we take care of the fact that the underlying most important part of the small piece of our main system that's going to make us $20 million a year is run by a kid in Nebraska that's been maintaining it thanklessly for 2003. And so that's it. That's the conversation I want to have. I'll do that a little bit later. What I'd like is I'm going to stop presenting. And truly, what I want everybody to just to start thinking about is, what is it that we can do? Like, at what moment does it make sense to, has anybody contributed to open source or knows what that is? Yes, so somebody knows what that is. Jumbo, I'll give you an example. So Todd at Boca Code has brought in Ahmed, which I pronounce as how you pronounce it, and he has a fantastic repo that has over 1,500 people that forked it, 13,000 stars, and how he's made money of it has been that he has gotten jobs because of it, or he's used it as resumes. So, okay, that particular open source contributor, one of the teachers at Boca Code, which has written a book on augmented reality for iPhone, very high end, very, very smart guy, gets rewarded by walking into an interview. And, the first thing that happens is the interviewers, they shake his hand and say, I don't care if you want the job, it's yours. That's a contribution. You know what I mean? If he gets the job interview because of it, that's a that you're getting paid for. But GitHub has recently had the ability to give to contributors directly from their website, and I don't know. We can all look at it together, but I don't know if it's like automatic. Like, for example, Jumbo has created sample APIs. It's used by all 3 of the coding camps in South Florida. Has anybody seen if, Jeremy, have you done anything to get a button there? Is there a button at your GitHub?
That's a good question. Let me look.
All right. So tell us.
I didn't do anything specific to do it. So I'm looking at.
Does anybody else know
on
all that? And then this is what I want you all to unmute. This is an unusual presentation. So you'll see that. What truly I want you to do is think about how you contribute. What should we do? Should we contribute? So let's start with what we talked about there in sample APIs in github.com/Jumbo.
So I'm looking at my repo incognito. github.com/Jumbo/sample APIs. I'll put that in the chat. And I don't see a button.
There's no button, Todd. Thank you for contributing to that. That's right.
I was going to contribute.
Yes. Aurel, how are you? Oh, Orly, pardon me. How are you? Thank you. Parag, thank you. Alex, thank you. Ed, thank you. Victoria, thank you for joining us. Keith, thank you for joining us. I love that picture. So there is no button. Thank you, Todd. And that's the other thing. I'm also a contributor, so I don't know. Maybe they would remove the button because of me. So I'm glad. Thank you, Todd, that we can see that there isn't something about it. So, for example, is that something that should be on every GitHub? What nice surprise would be for the Faker.js guy is not a famous one. There was another one that was famous for having trouble.
Was it with LeftPad?
Yes. So let's talk about that. So if you don't know the story, allow me to elaborate. What happened is LeftPad was a product that was had a simple purpose, had certain things that you allowed it to trim back and forth, a bunch of different functionality. Simple, by no means easy. It's not that I could do it. It's been a project that other people have used. And so like a Russian doll, other people have used other people's, I've used other people, and essentially your React was using left line or whatever this is called, LeftPad. And the second LeftPad, what they did is they removed their repo, and instantly every single package all the way up the chain started breaking. And I'm not sure if it was React that started breaking, but other very serious packages started breaking of no fault of their own. And so if all of us here are part of the organization which runs this company, and we all get paid to run open source, and we're well paid and we feel comfortable, all of a sudden our package for which we're responsible for is down because of something we didn't even do. And what's even worse is if you're not paid. You're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, and sometimes as a giver, I can tell you this, giving gives me a reward. Giving you something makes me feel fantastic. I get happy with that. And so when I do that, I'm happy. But now it's work because I have to check somebody else out. So, what can you do with that one? And that was one of the,
I like the sentiment that you said about like, I do sample APIs because I want to, right? First of all, it solved the problem that I had, when I was teaching. RESTful endpoints was hard, right? Explaining what the verbs are and all that stuff to try to get to, do basic CRUD is hard enough, let alone adding the authentication layer in there. So the way I view open source contribution is like it scratches my own itch. It's something that I'm doing for myself. And with that note, I don't expect to be paid for this right away, first of all, and possibly in the long term. And then second point is like, just because something is broken doesn't necessarily mean that I have to jump and do anything on it. Like, I don't feel like a sense of obligation of someone submitted an issue that I got to jump on and fix it right away, right? I don't feel a sense of urgency on that. Like, I may do it because, I'm bored and I'm a good person, but it's not necessarily a need to do it. So when someone starts demanding I do something for it because it's free, that's when it's like, yeah, probably not going to do that.
well,
So there's that aspect of it.
Let's take to the extent. Todd, I'm going to ask you a question directly. You use sample APIs, you used to, and I think in that situation, I was like, watch out. I just brought down the server. I'm doing something, so it's down. And you went, no problem. I have my own version, right? But if you were not able to, it would be trouble. And you might have something where, school is different, but if you had a company that was not on sample APIs, it's simply that, what you guys think about the sample API. But, if you were down, would you have expected support, right? If after all, it would have affected you. And if you couldn't just instantly copy it from somewhere else.
Right. Like for our part-time course that we're launching, where, we're going to have somebody else as the lead instructor, they might not, I might not have told them like, oh, we have this backup to sample APIs that we created.
Right.
If you need that in a pinch. And so, but, if that lead instructor were somebody like you or Jeremy, you'd be able to jump on and fix it, right? Because you guys are the ones who run the project. But, if that were like, if that were somebody else, they, or somebody from another school that doesn't even know you guys that's using sample APIs, having, that, and that's how a lot of open source projects stay afloat is, they offer it for free, but then you pay for support, right? So if you need help, you need support, you can buy a support package.
Great point. And I think that's something that should be discussed. Is that supposed to be the way? And I think it's a valid. Red Hat is $1 billion company, and it is supported by, and it creates open source software. Joel, you sound like you wanted to say something.
Well, can you hear me first of all?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, I was afraid my microphone wasn't working. I've been doing this for a long time. So one of the things to think about too is as I approach it just as what is the reliability of what I'm going to be using and how much do I have to depend on it? So there's a couple of thoughts that came out of what you guys were saying. And the first one is I'm in the middle of fighting a problem with an Octa Sdk right now, which is a quasi open source thing, but it's not really, it's their SDK. And they have issues in it, and trying to get them to fix issues when they arise is like really, really hard. And I've had this before. I had a problem with WordPerfect back in the 1980s, and I put the entire weight of the US government on WordPerfect trying to get the problem fixed, and they still refused to do it. Okay, I had the Department of Defense behind me and everything, and it didn't work. Okay, so I've had this problem with almost every vendor I've worked with, as well as the open source stuff. So when you're using open source services in production, like you're talking about with the API stuff that you
Yeah.
were just discussing,
Right.
you know, that can be a real issue, but it can also be a real issue when a vendor is doing it too. And Cisco has dropped out a couple of times over the last few months on WebEx. So, you know, it's like, okay, what's the difference? What's the real difference here? And if you're talking about using code, well, yeah, problems can arise, but at the same time, you should be picking those up in development. This shouldn't be a production issue. This should be that your integration tests and stuff start breaking because something broke in that package. And just like with the vendor, I got to figure out what I'm going to do to fix this. And a lot of times it's been easier to deal with the open source because at the bottom of this whole thing, I can go fix it if I have to and make my own version of it. When I'm dealing with a vendor, as I was just saying, like with WordPerfect, I can't even get it fixed. So it's like, here I am, what do I do now? I got pressure from my bosses to make it work, and I can't make it work because it's a vendor product.
Well, it sounds
So-
like something that we should all think as developers. I don't know if it's related to that,
Yeah.
but I'll give you an example that was simple APIs, but quite the opposite. So it wasn't that someone was relying on it, quite the opposite. We were upgrading sample APIs, and I was upgrading the backend. I was adding jokes. Sorry, we have GAT jokes and sample APIs. Sorry.
Dude,
Yeah, we do now because I made a little app. I was bored in Christmas time, so I added a bunch of different bad jokes. I'm good for that. And then I had an app, and it reads the bad jokes in this funny language. My daughter loves it. 10-year-old humor. That's what I'm best at. But one of the things that I noticed is me and Jeremy hadn't touched front end, and so when I republished with the new backend, the front end, it was failing. And it was failing for something I would like to talk about. Maybe it's the next subject and it's related, because I had npmi and to blow everything away and npmi to install. In other words, get the latest package, just like NuGet, just like package, npm, whatever it is you use on your language. This was, in React had gone from 15.6 to 16. Let's just say that's the number. And 16 wasn't compatible with the front end that we had currently. And so Jeremy caught it right away and said, "Oh, Damian just went down." And so I not only that changed the package. I don't know if I published it back up to GitHub to say specifically 15.6. Let's just say that was the number of React that was
16.8.
16.8.
You want to be accurate.
Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds good. Irrelevant, but fine information. So someone's a manager. Or the opposite, developer. So, but that's something we have to be aware of. In other words, maybe Joel, the next time you upgrade, it is that you have to be, are we to upgrade happy?
Well,
Let's open up that can of worms.
Isn't that what an integration test should have picked up?
Right, and the integration was you called me Mr. Integration because I had to test it, right? So, and I get it, and so that's something we have to be aware of. Should we in the future just blindly upgrade something and just expect it to work? Should the libraries that we work on be aware of the fact that we're blindly updating and keep up to date? How can we fix this? Joel, you seem to have opinions with this.
Well,
what do we do to fix it?
I think it's all part of the same thing, whether it's vendor or open source software. You have to have appropriate tests in order to make sure that what you're going to do is going to continue to work. And I just wanted to relay that, even if you have tests, you don't necessarily cover all of the bases. Okay. Right. I was working for Miami-Dade County, and I had to do an upgrade on a Sun Microsystems box. And
showing your age.
Yeah, really. And I was already old when that happened. Okay.
Oh my God.
So, I did every test that was required to make sure that this patch wasn't going to break anything that we had in production.
Right.
Okay. So I have test systems. I have sandboxes to do this stuff in. We have automated tests to make sure that everything is going to work. And I ran through all of that. So we put it in production, and immediately we had a problem.
Okay.
Because the test didn't cover some obscure thing
Right.
that was being done or used.
Yeah.
So it's,
right.
It's always going to happen.
Right.
Okay. It's always going to happen. I also got in trouble there because, the system went down, and, we got it back up, and we had a postmortem, and in the postmortem, I figured out that it was this patch that had caused the problem from what they described. So
Right.
I said, well, okay, so I know what the problem is. It was this patch that we had scheduled to put in. We tested everything, we put it in, but apparently we still have a problem. So we roll it out, and we figure out where we're going to proceed. And I got into two things with people. One of them was that, well, we had downtime, and we can't have downtime. It's going to affect our service level agreement. And I was like, your service level agreement is for 99% uptime. That means you can be down for 3.65 days every year.
Did you calculate that? I love that.
You don't have to calculate it. It's just, there's 365
Simple.
days in a year. What's 1% of that?
You're right.
It's like they got really pissed off at me. I said we were down for like 2 hours. Okay, it's like you're a long way from coming close to your service level agreement. And then the second part was I got ripped out into the hall, and my boss dressed me up and down because I brought up in the meeting what the problem was and how we could solve it. And I threw my team under the bus because we had created the problem, and I shouldn't have said anything.
Yes.
So, we were supposed to pretend like we don't know what happened. And I was like, I thought we were here to solve the problem. And apparently that wasn't true. So I'm no longer working for him,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Watch what you say in meetings.
Yes. Absolutely. So as you can see,
it's the same thing.
Joel's bringing up
we're doing.
that the issue is new and started when the year started with 19 something or other, right? So 1990 something.
I've been having these problems since 1976.
We started having this conversation, I want to say like November of last year, like October of last year, because I read an article talking about the state of front-end development is all wishy-washy. All the packages are changing, this new version of this front-end framework, that new version of this front-end framework. And it was kind of talking about new developers coming into this, this was from a perspective from an experienced developer, not envying new developers coming into this because it's a nightmare. It's a whirlwind. We don't know what packages do we need. How do we keep up to date? If it's updating so quickly, and everything breaks, what's going on? But when going back and forth in the comments, Rick talked about this isn't a new problem. We have this everywhere. He's working on his startup and has the same problem with his iOS application, has the same problem with his Kotlin application, has the same problem with the .NET stuff that he's working on. So you're talking about all the packages for NuGet and NPM and all these other different ecosystems. It's not a new problem, and it's not unique to JavaScript. So I just want to point that out as well, that it's a open source issue. Right?
Can I jump in?
To your point, we need to keep up with. These things shouldn't be production issues. This should be done in the development phase.
Joel, if you don't mind, Emily wanted to chime in. By the way, for everybody else, please unmute yourself. This is unusual in our event. So my twin is Esteban. We come from the same. We are brothers from different mothers. We are. So if you ever talk about twins, you know it's that guy over there. And we want to make it as open as possible. So please chime in. This is not going to be a presentation. We already had a small presentation. It was more of a joke presentation than anything else. But to bring up the conversation, should we pay open source people? Should we rely on them? Should we worry about upgrades, which is what Joe and Emily will talk about in a couple of seconds. So just want everybody to come in. Feel free to unmute and let me know. Talk to me.
Can you guys hear me?
Flawlessly, yes.
So today with my company, I was dealing with an issue where my Postgres was I needed to download the previous version, and it everybody on my dev team had to set it up differently. Like I'm using Docker, they're using whatever they're using, and
Right.
it's just the problem. It keeps reoccurring that I keep having to revert back to that version,
Yeah.
and it's not being. I mean, it's not up to date. I'm on version like 2.1.
And if we don't document that, like that's one of the things I'm doing at my existing company. We don't document it. I would have installed the latest Postgres, just like you, and struggled and the worst thing would be not to go into someone and say what's going on, and then go like, oh yeah, you can't use the latest. That would be the worst and all that. So I agree with that. I think that we have to be all watch out, learn from documentation, like Joel says, think about integration as. Don't just upgrade willy-nilly. If you're playing around with it, go for it. If you're trying something new, definitely go for it. And then you'll find that a new version of React needs a new version of Router, or a new version of this, or a new version of that, or Bootstrap, or this, the other. So they start thinking about it. I have a project that I have to, I'm not kidding, do npm-i. So in other words, do that initial, NuGet get the latest with an older version of Node, which will install an older version of all the packages. Then upgrade the Node, because my code is, of course, all the new stuff. And so I have to do that with mine, and it is killing me, right? It's a project that's so old that that's the way we do it. And unfortunately, I have to be aware of it. There might be a right combination, my package.jsons, that would affect that, but similar to Emily's issue, that's in my list of things to do. Downgrade Node, npm-i, upgrade Node to the latest.
Damian,
That's crazy. Tell me.
Does your package.json file have version numbers in it?
It does. And so we should talk a little bit about them. Yes, tell me about it, Joel.
Well, I just find a lot of people in whatever package manager they're using, in whatever environment they're programming in, tend to forget to put version numbers on the packages that they're using. So you come along 3 months later and you do, for example, an npm install,
Right.
and it installs the current versions of all those packages. But when you're doing development, your package manager should have the specific versions of the packages that you need.
Right.
And if you do an install, it should
Yes.
install everything the way the project should be able to work. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to upgrade, but here's where we get into, okay, look, packages have become dated or obsolete. It's time to upgrade the packages that our project depends on. So we start out, and this is not a trivial job by any means. We start out by upgrading packages one at a time and making sure that everything continues to work. And sometimes there are dependencies, so you have to upgrade a few packages at the same time. But again, we track what the packages are. So that's why I'm looking at you a little funny when you're saying you have to downgrade Node in order to get this to work.
So what happens is I rely on one particular package that's very old, and it relies on older versions of things that it relies on. And since they're part of npm, I would have to install them, see it crash, go into the Node modules, and then change its package files to refer to something without the arrow key. I've just put into the chat, if you want a link, anybody that's interested, all the rules about how you upgrade, or how is defined that we say we want version, to Jeremy's point, 16.8 and no further of React, as the issue that was having here and all that. And then do I want gracias, David. And then, do I want to continue with a minor upgrade? So 1.2.3, I'm okay with 0.2.4, but now I'm not okay with 2.000, or beta, or something like that.
And that's a great link. But are you saying that you have an old dependency that itself, its own dependency chain, is not precisely defined?
Yes. And this is, and
okay.
getting back to the original question,
Yeah.
can I, I must use this. It's something, it's Puppeteers, everybody's using it. It controls Chrome. Don't ask what I'm doing with it. I'm controlling website and hitting website,
Yeah,
but I'm
I know
using
what
an older
Puppeteer
version
is.
called Casper.
Okay.
And Casper is so old that the website's down. So there's not documentation. I have to go to archive.org for the website. And that's an example of I don't have a choice, right? I have to do that unless I want to rewrite all the code that's using that. And for anybody who was there today at the boot camp, I said that I was testing the tester. That's what I was testing.
That's actually what I went through with my company today is because I have to downgrade my NPM, and then I have to install the not the latest dependencies. So it's kind of tricky, configuring that and, downgrading my version of Node and getting the dependencies back to the older versions rather than, installing locally the most up-to-date dependencies and everything. So that was, I actually spent a lot of time on that today.
It's a real pain. It's a real pain. And you've got to go for it.
And what you were saying with Postgres is like, I have 10, I need 9.6.
And that's already 5 versions older than the officially brand new version of Postgres. But then again, that's the other thing, do we always want to keep to the latest and greatest? Do we want to keep one major release older, or in this case, 5 major releases? Thank you, Todd. So I love that, Emily. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And don't forget, it depends on whether or not it's viable to actually upgrade the product.
Right.
Because, you might be staying on old versions of stuff when you could upgrade, but nobody wants to make the effort to upgrade because it's going to cost money and there's no point in doing it. So we just continue to run on the old versions. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Technical, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But let me throw out another thing for you guys to think about, just briefly here. I've been starting to feel that we're getting a lot sloppier in doing all of this, though, because you guys shouldn't be running into these problems, because what you're describing to me is people not using package managers correctly.
And it feels that way. I hear you. Joe. But unfortunately, in some situations, I'm not saying I'm not responsible for exactly what she's talking about, but in some situations, the packages themselves are not doing it. And so therefore, there is no way to fix it unless I now go and contribute to that open source to change, its way of saying anything above 14.6. Well, or in Emily's case, anything, Postgres 9.6 or higher, and what they actually meant is 9.6. But if I'm relying on that project and that's project that's pointing to Postgres 9.6,
and also
Spider-Man pointing Spider-Man.
I have ran into the issue where, they stopped maintaining AngularJS in November, and I was working on a project that has been, we got it from overseas. I was working for an agency, and it just totally lost my train of thought. But
you're right. So you can't rely, even if it's your own project, you're going to inherit something that somebody else broke, and you might not even be aware of it. So I hear you, Emily. I think that's
and you're dealing with something which isn't officially supported.
Anything, whether it's open source or it's a paid product.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if it's an old product that's been around for a while, regardless if it's an open source or you're paying for it, if it's deprecated, it's deprecated. There's not much you can do about it other than update it or sunset the project yourself.
And they're still trying to use JavaScript, and that's it's why it's just not being maintained. So
you're right.
No.
And Jermo will tell you, with having 1,000 people below him, he doesn't have time to pay you to do something, and at the end of the week you have code that worked exactly as it was before. You know what I mean? So I've worked at Toyota, and it was very hard for this one project we got to get funding for, and literally our sales pitch was, if everything goes right, nothing will change. And it sounds ridiculous.
That's a hard sell.
Yeah, and it's the cell that keeps mainframes and COBOL in these government agencies, right? Like you said earlier, Joel, if it doesn't work, if it's not broken, why change it? And these mainframes are not the original ones that were there in the 70s and 80s when they were created. They're brand new, they're gorgeous. But it's not working. I started my business. I mean, my career. Well, not really, but my first job, when I first walked in. The reason why I'm a programmer is because my friends, my dad's friend, she was a programmer, and I saw her programming. And then eventually, about 5, 6, 7 years, when I was a teenager or in my 18th, they gave me the opportunity to work on the project. And it went from a large thing that would fit in this cafe behind me to a PC that looked like an old-fashioned PC, like a little square things. I could grab it, and it was still a mini computer. It was a mainframe, think of it, and it was running the same software she had coded 7 years ago, and I was correcting now to add new features in BASIC. Why change it? The hardware had changed; it had improved, but some of the software was the same software she had written 7 years ago, and that I was inheriting now.
The only reason for changing it would be you can't support the original project for some reason. The hardware just isn't there.
I hear you. We heard someone say hello. Is someone having a hard time with their microphone, or did I hear something I didn't hear? So, anyways, looks like someone's outside saying hello from the back of the cafe. Sorry.
I just wanted to point out to people, though, that this is not unique to software. Okay, I can give you 2 examples. My mother was an architect. When I was a kid, a 2x4 was 2 inches by 4 inches. When I was a young adult, a 2x4 was 1 3/4 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Today, a 2x4 is 3.5 by 2.5. So and if you try to fix an old building using a new 2x4, you got a big problem.
Right.
Well,
I think my wife will tell you
decisions, but terrible about updating my house.
My wife will tell you that don't trust men in inches. But what did you mean by that, Jeremy?
What?
What? I'm sorry.
Honestly, even the Apple computer, the 13-inch is 13.3 inches. So now they come out with a 14-inch computer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's just, my point is, though, that the size of the 2x4 changed, which has an impact if you are trying to work on an old building.
I agree.
Okay, so it's like the new 2x4 doesn't fit the old building. So, you have a deprecation issue here.
100%. So
it happens.
We shouldn't trust 13-inch monitors or 13-inch 2x4s.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
13.3. They
0.3, even better, even more.
By the way,
I never knew that.
If you want to talk about bugs, don't upgrade to the latest version of OS X unless you want your battery to die.
No.
Yeah, because 0.2, which just came out, apparently has some kind of bug in it, and it keeps the Bluetooth devices active in sleep mode.
Sweet.
So it's just part of what I'm saying. I feel like we're getting sloppier and sloppier as we go. We have more software, more products from more companies. So it feels like we're doing things really great because I can buy the tools that I want to do the job. But it turns out that those tools seem to be more and more sloppily built. because
So-
everybody's in such a hurry.
I think so. And Jeremy representing the big bosses, the big evil bosses. What do you say about that, and how hard we should work, and whether we should get those? I have a customer that wants to finish their project by the end of the February, and the first week of February. And I said, "Oh, why?" And they were like, "Because it's a good day."
Yeah, I mean, part of my job, I feel, is to say no, right? Like for these made up dates and arbitrary pressures, no one pushes back because everybody feels like they can't push back. And one of the things I've heard from previous bosses all the way up until now is that everybody's burning out because they're trying to work too much, and the boss isn't necessarily saying we need this done. I'm just holding you accountable to the time you said you needed. But the person making that estimate is like kind of reading the room and be like, what do you think the right answer is? What do you want me to say? So part of the role that I've filled for the past few years has just been like, this isn't reasonable, and here's why, and here's what is reasonable, and hold me accountable to that. And I think that message needs to be, other people need to own that, other than just the manager, other than just the tech lead, because if it's not reasonable, it's not reasonable, because everybody's got their own pace that they can work at, and capabilities and strengths and weaknesses. So it's a collaborative effort. Like, you tell me something's not going to be reasonable, me being a technical person, I can either call BS if I'm smelling something fishy, or I can point you in the right direction that might make this a little bit easier for you, right? Like, you're maybe thinking about it in the incorrect way. So it's like getting that estimate is really a sign of, do you need help or not too? So push back and say no.
I feel like that's a talk we should all have, or a presentation. We should go down to estimations and all that. Todd's a much better estimator than me, and Esteban, to anybody that says estimates, he says no problem. Let me give me a week and I'll give you an estimate, right? And that'll give you a figure out when we really do the estimates. You're right. I mean, it could be that being the fault, of us pushing ourselves too much. NASA is very famous for having 0 bugs in production. I don't know. I feel it's more of a saying than anything else. They have books about it, but maybe they do it.
I mean, I remember a Mars rover smashing into the ground because they calculated it in meters but programmed it in feet. So I don't know if that's true.
2 different vendors.
Well, it still means there was QA issues, right?
And it was true. And you can't say that NASA has 0 bugs in production, because you could just look at, let me see, 1 Apollo mission, a couple of shuttle missions.
They mean by bugs in the software, right? Now bugs sort of in the estimations, or in those situations, it could be that it was
issues.
Which one?
Mechanical issues or something.
Well, also mechanical issues, but specifically with the first one that exploded, the issue seemed to have been that there were engineers that had defined, they had calculated a limit, and not to use, I'm using the word management in a generality. Someone higher up decided they had overestimated how little it could handle, and that it was a wrong estimate, and so therefore they could push it more, and they did. And by the 3rd or 4th time they pushed it, it blew up. Right. So at first they were right. The engineer had overestimated. At the end, they realized, yes, but only so many times. Right. There was so many faulties. But they're talking about software and all that. I don't know the exact quote. There's a couple of books on it, but but you're right. I mean, they and I have this because I'm now working for an IoT company, right? That works in real life, like our software. Like I always tell, if I program something wrong, the worst thing I'm going to do is lose your crypto, right? And the least I'm going to do is all of a sudden the happy cat doesn't dance, and then you get a 404 error page. But now right? Since we're, I'm in a company that programs robots, this thing could run over a kid, right? I mean, that's a serious concern and all that. So, should I test more? That's my question to you. All of you.
My question used to be, if I screw this up, how many soldiers on the battlefield are going to die?
Right. My goodness. My goodness.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure I don't want, man.
All because of 2x4s being measured incorrectly? Jesus.
No, because of my software.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I worked for DoD, so on systems that were used in the field.
Right.
So I mean, let's circle this back up and talk about, like, is open source bad, right? And we've talked about a bunch of different pros and cons with it, and I think I'd like to hear everybody's opinion on is open source bad, and kind of wrap that conversation up with those who haven't spoken. Feel free to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation.
Also, even if you haven't created, you have used, right? You've used it, you've seen it, you've heard about events. Tell us your opinion on that.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Have you seen anything in open source? I mean, you've contributed great, Emily. I think you pointed out, the issues of, a particular version, and the newer version all of a sudden doesn't support. Should we rely, Postgres, the issue you're having today, that is an open source project. Should we rely on that? Should we say, no, my company shouldn't be using Postgres. It should be using something more paid, like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, whatever or Oracle SQL. Say it again.
Or Open Word.
Open Word. Is that a euphemism for something sexual?
Nope, that was a callback to Joel's comment.
Got it.
Word perfect.
I would
Got
like
it.
to get back.
There it is.
Oh, sorry, you were speaking.
No, James, you were. Tell us.
I want to go back to the topic on, should open source projects be receiving some payment? Like, I do know that there are some projects that have received some form of payment, like maybe like on Patreon, like this one website that utilizes artificial intelligence and machine learning by creating different voices. Let me see if I can find it. Voice.
Yes, that'd be interesting. That's a question.
I'm curious, just because most of the open source licenses won't let you receive payment directly. You can receive payment for support, but not for the product itself.
Orly, thank you for joining us. Joel, I think the license says you cannot sell the software. So if I get Ubuntu or something open source and I sell it, I cannot do that. But I 100%, I don't know of anything where I cannot receive money as a even a contributor.
That's what he's saying, though. He's saying as a contributor, you're selling your services to be a part of it, not the software itself.
Yeah, Joel.
I was just saying that you can't. I don't think in most of the licenses that people use, I don't think you could sell it directly. But you can accept donations. I certainly do that, though nobody has ever donated to my coffee fund. Not once. You can certainly sell support. Right. You can, Red Hat and other companies like Ubuntu make their money partially because you can sell the open source package as the core if you're charging for what is wrapping it. So Red Hat Enterprise, they're charging you for what is wrapping the Linux core.
I mean, to James' point was more like, should we donate to the React folks? God knows they don't need it, but
Make
should
Mark
we?
Zuckerberg is good.
Well, yeah, honestly, I look at that just as you said, with when I'm dealing with open source, I look at who is providing it. And if I need or I like what is being provided and it's a small organization, I tend to contribute.
Well, it's just
Love
for
it.
paying. Well, it's just for paying for the basic necessities of running any application like on Microsoft Azure. Would you pay for what you use, like a utility
Yeah.
bill? Say like for $300 a month. But then when the application gets bigger and bigger with more data, you may need to get some more donations to keep it running or downsize it.
Yeah, but you're talking about the service, which is not the same thing as open source. So if you want to run a service, it costs money to run a service. It's fair to charge for that service. If you've been giving it away for free and you suddenly discover that you can't do that anymore, then if you want to maintain the model, tell people I can't continue to do this for free.
Would a good analogy be sample APIs in this scenario? Because like what sample APIs is doing is just a RESTful endpoint, that you can rapidly deploy. Yeah. Todd mentioned that he's pulled it down locally, so that way when he's teaching, using that as a teaching tool, it's guaranteed to be up because he has control over that. But the service, the .com, is something that is a service that I could charge for, not the sample APIs system, but the .com that's up there for free that everybody can use.
Yeah, I mean, if it was free and everybody is using it, and you're starting to get hit because you got to pay Azure or AWS or somebody to keep it running, then that's fair, right?
Jeremy,
so do you see the difference, James?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yes, Todd.
Just to clarify, Jerembo, we started creating like a separate service for Boca Code students, like a platform. We're building out a platform that eventually our students will have access to. And in it, we built a couple of API points that they can hit that are completely different than sample APIs, but work the same way, where it's just an API point that you can hit. You don't need to worry about authentication or anything like that. Same kind of idea. So we have our own sample APIs, if you will. It's not that we've pulled down the repo or anything like that. Just to clarify.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the point still stands of like that could be the path you've chosen, right? And that's the open source product. The .com is the service that I could eventually charge for, right? So that's the difference that James, you're asking about. If you've got something up on Azure that is occurring cost, that's the service. It's not the software that's running it, right? So you could charge for that. And should someone be paid for that? I think so, right? Like, I don't see why not. Like, why should I, as the maintainer, incur that cost out of the kindness of my heart? Like, that only goes so far. I've got bills to pay just like everybody else. So, but for the sampleapis.com, if Todd wanted to take that down and use it, that's part of the MIT license I put on there. He's absolutely free to do that.
Now I have a question. So just an analogy. So open source, like React, it's an open source JavaScript library. And AWS, I pay to have my EC2 running so my database can be up. So what I'm getting is that, well, what I think whatever, is that the AWS, I'm paying to keep my database up and running versus using an open source framework, kind of like an analogy, if that made sense or not.
Yeah, I think so. It's because like what you're paying for is the data and the database itself and the transfer of that information, not the open source software that is creating the CRUD to that particular database.
Yeah.
I think it could be even easier for you, Emily, if you just think about Postgres is an open source product, an open source database, but if you're running it on AWS, then what you're running is not open source. That's the service.
Okay. So we've addressed that. I think Emily repeated that originally a little bit earlier. So that sounds good. What do you all think on maybe James? It sounded like what you were saying was that what was the not really what the difference. It just sounded like you had a question about it. Maybe this is related. I know that I believe it's the Cassandra service. So let's just say it is for a second. Cassandra is a service, literally a service that you can get from AWS. You can run a Cassandra node on AWS. What is Cassandra? Don't worry about it. Let's just say it's like SQL. Let's just say it for now. It's not.
Yeah.
So if you do that, what the Cassandra people were like, we don't like that we're contributing all this work, and all of a sudden AWS is making all this money. So they said, perfect. Next version, from version 13.7 to 14, we change the license, and you cannot use this software unless you cannot use the software if you are a cloud provider. Aha, they said. And then AWS said, okay, we are branching Cassandra. We have Cassandra 2 or Cassandra DIR, and boom, that's what they're using on their service at this moment. I'm not sure if it's Cassandra and all that, but what do you all think about that? Was that the right thing to do? Should AWS have said, listen, let's split hair. There's not split hairs here. Here's $1 million. You're welcome. What do y'all think?
It depends.
I'll take $1 million.
Okay.
It depends on how it's approached too.
Okay.
If they were confrontational in doing it, which is what they were, then Amazon just said, okay, fine, we'll go our own way, and we'll make something that looks just like your product, but
oh, they didn't make something just like your product. They copied it. They forked it. That's a copy.
Yeah.
They didn't go and say something
but they can't
compatible.
they can't get anything. They can't get any new features, Damian, unless they add them themselves. So
they can absolutely get new features by literally copying and pasting. It's literally what Microsoft did to create C# and what Sun did when they copied Java.
That actually creates some other issues, which we don't have time to get into because I'm going to have to be dropping off here by 8. But now you're talking. Well, now you're talking about code copyright issues and stuff. So, can you copy from one pool's open source and plug it into another? And we know that that's always going to happen. But if it happens at the level of Amazon, that's you got a leg to stand on in the legal system.
You're right.
About that. It also just creates this other issue too, when a company like, well, not a company, but the folks who do Cassandra change their license. Okay, what about all the people who are using it behind other cloud products?
So they said no cloud provider can host the version that we're now releasing, the next version. So they didn't say anybody couldn't use it. They said that the providers couldn't use it. So, for example, if they used it and they put it on EC2 instance, a virtual machine, that was legitimately okay.
But what if I have another product that happens to be using Cassandra as its database behind the scenes, and I am providing services to people using cloud computers?
No, but
where does that leave me?
I'll give you an answer to that. We, as Toyota, we use Cassandra. If we want to use the Cassandra version, have to have a virtual machine on. We use Azure. Again, I used to work there. I don't work there anymore. But when I did, if we had to use it, I believe we were running our own instance anyways. But if we had to use it, we would have to use it on a virtual machine. We cannot use the service provided specifically as software as a service by Amazon because by license, it's not supported.
Well, yeah, but what I was getting at,
what we did is we used that version that Amazon, in that situation, I don't remember what we did, but we could use the Amazon version.
When they say cloud provider, are they restricting it to Amazon and Azure and IBM and everybody else is doing cloud providing?
No, they were very specific, Joel. If you feel like you want to know, they said you cannot run this as a cloud provider, not on a cloud provider.
Okay.
So that's what
but the thing is a lot of us are not a cloud provider like Amazon, and we may be let me give you a real life example. Okay. Octa does identity management, one of the biggest ones out there, right? Okay, we've talked about them before. Octa runs all their stuff on AWS. So here's the question. If Octa was using Cassandra as their database behind their system, are they not a cloud provider?
They are not.
But they are. They provide
I cannot run
as a cloud service.
I cannot write my Docker image on Octa. There's your
I guess
answer.
it depends on what you define cloud provider to be.
I just did. I mean,
yeah.
The Verizon.
Was Cassandra that specific in what is a cloud provider? Because I could argue that Octa is a cloud provider. They provide identity management as a cloud.
I wouldn't. I don't think that would be up to question up to them, and I don't think any judge would be confused by that. But that I don't know. James, maybe we just change the subject. James, you put it on a website, 15.ai. Can you tell us a little bit about that, James?
Sure. I just came across this after watching a video talking about how you can type in anything you want and you have a character from a TV show speak it out for you. It's basically a text-to-speech software application, but it uses the voice of characters. What this does is that it collects episodes of, like, I guess, TV shows like SpongeBob, and they put in the audio clips of some of the characters, use the artificial intelligence to match the intonations and voices, and you can type in anything you want. Like, you can tell it to speak in some other way you like. Like, let's say I want to type in a word SpongeBob, or what SpongeBob wants to say. Like, what do you want me to tell it to say?
Hello, FloridaJS.
Let's see. Well, it might it might say something different. After I type it in, it's going to generate some few audio clips based on the data it collects, or the data it already has. And it's already parsing the input, it's loading the model, and it's displaying the data. Like,
play it. We'll have it live. Oh, say it again. Hordass. That it's swearing at me. Oh my God, that's so rude.
Hey, let me try.
I've been called hard ass before.
Yeah.
So I'm not so surprised. But SpongeBob saying that.
I'm also going to say this has to be a copyright violation.
Not at this moment, because
this cannot come under fair use.
SpongeBob has never had said to me specifically, "Hello, hard ass." So
Joel,
I'm just saying.
If you go to the website, they give you all kinds of disclaimers, and if you use it, you have, attribution, blah blah blah. So Damian, I actually I just got a Slack from Steve Smodish. He was on the call early and got kicked off.
Okay.
And he had a question that he wanted me to relay for him. He's watching live.
Tell him to come back on.
YouTube.
Tell him to come back on.
Well, I'm assuming he can't come back on for some reason. But like 10 minutes ago, he Slacked me. I just saw it now. And he said, so it's kind of taking the conversation back. But we were saying how, there's all these problems with open source. And he said, do paid versions automatically solve all those problems? He wanted to know that. So, Steve, I hope I did your question justice.
Thank you, Steve. I'm not sure how we got it. So please let us know. Please come to the next event. I mean, if you can't get in this. Paid, I mean, that's quite, I think we would be living in a different world if everything was paid.
See you, Jeremy.
I think, Jeremy has to drop. So we'll continue this conversation.
I'm gonna have to drop too. So.
Sounds good.
I also got.
Tell me.
Why would Amazon have open source frameworks, libraries, whatever, code that you can use if there are rules and regulations put in place that you can't use it?
Great question, Emily. So let me address that. They don't. What they did is if this, and please excuse me if the Cassandra wasn't right, I'm just using it. It's one of the services, happens to be what I work on at work. Cassandra is, anyways, it's like not really like a database. Let's think about it.
I have it up here. Yeah.
Perfect. So what it is it's a software. And what the Cassandra team did is says, hey, we don't like the fact that we've given so much of our time. And think at the beginning, wow, what a reward that my work went up to as a service similar to SQL or the functions or the authentication you guys have been using with Firebase. They are using this Cassandra as a service. It's up there and still up there. And they were using, let's just say for numbers, this is not the right number, but let's just say they were using version 13. The Cassandra people are like, aha, we got them. They released version 14, and specifically in the terms and conditions of version 14, again, the numbers are wrong, but it gets the right idea. They said you cannot use version 14 and onwards because they cannot be things retroactively, right? 14 and onwards with if you are a cloud provider. That's in their terms and conditions. So Amazon said, great, what are we going to do? And someone at Amazon says, we're going to fork the project. You know that I run sample APIs for Jeremy. Jeremy created it. I run on my own server. And you can go to sample APIs in the bottom and the top right, and you should do this from any project you like. You can click on fork. Now it's on your repo. And if the MIT license holds true and it is under MIT license, you now own that version. You own it in the sense that you cannot make money off it, but now you can run it. So they forked it, and they are now running that version. So Amazon is running the forked version of Cassandra. They changed their name. They emphasize that it's like Cassandra, but it's not Cassandra. It is technically their version. The only difference really is that it's an older version, as if I forked the iPhone 10 and all of a sudden everybody's using my version of the iPhone 10, even though you're on iPhone 13. But it works. You can make phone calls. You can download all the apps. And in that analogy, that's what they did. They continued down that road. So
Okay.
That's what happened. So, that's what happened in that situation. Great question. So they're not running the version that Cassandra team officially said you couldn't run. They're running another version, their own version. That was from the original split fork, right? That's why it's called a fork, right? So that's it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let me know if I got anything wrong.
Yes, I have the documentation up here as well.
Nice. Emily, you was on top of this thing. That's awesome.
Monitor.
Awesome. So
what do you guys
it's
think? Sorry. What do you guys think about Blender? Do you guys know Blender? Blender
Tell us
is an
about
open
it. Tell us about it.
source 3D package that has been evolving over the years from something that was really meaty and an alpha feeling to be able to compete with the big giants in the 3D market. Recently, when Apple decided to transition to Apple Silicon, and most recently with the M1 Pro and Max, with a lot of power in the graphic department and not Blender doing any 3D software for these guys, they decided to put 120,000 bucks a year or a month and a few developers in their fund that they have a fund to organize the collaborations. So now there's an open relationship with a big giant of technology and a 26 years old open source 3D program, and so that's like an example of a mature open source that has created a space in the industry for them to coexist with other vendors, and it's working. I think they have a small budget of 140,000 bucks or something every month for them to organize and maintain. But there's an obvious exchange of value created, and there's money. We discussed this in the beginning of the conversation. If there's there is some financial backup behind the product, it's easier to keep like a quid pro quo relationship. So if there's something going on, I will rush to fix it because I know that the exchange of value is now obvious, and there's money for people that put more hours and create whatever. And the other thing I want to talk, we are not talking about this level of maturity in individual markets here, not necessarily with all open source software, but the other thing I want to touch base with is the YouTube business model. In YouTube, you can find any information. You can probably learn how to operate Open Hard, right? There's a lot of information in the biggest video library in the world, and there is an exchange in value every time. There is free for the user side. You don't realize so that there's an advertisement, and we all know how that works. I was wondering if there's any way that we can solve the financial part issue with open source. I bring something to the world, and if it's valuable enough, and the coffee thing is not working, maybe there's a way to do it through some, having big brands and maybe advertisement. I don't know, something going on for this to bring some money, some energy back to a project that gets bigger every day, and only the management part of that is huge. And I mean, Linux wouldn't exist as it is right now without the community behind, right? And now it's the biggest server operator system the planet, right? So how we can support that to prevent future issues with open source? How we can create a business model that is financially sustainable to bring something new to the world and see how it floats, right?
Sounds good. I mean, you're going to see my left-wing nutcase thing about it. Maybe we all contribute. If we have a job as a developer, we all contribute $50 to NPN. And each time we do NPN-I, it calculates which projects you use the most and divvies up your $20, $30, $50, 2 cents among those projects. You know what I mean? And then, hey, the one who gets 2.5 million downloads a month might get, in the YouTube model, $15 a month, or maybe they're getting a nice $1,500 a month, which now means the rent is paid, right? Maybe I'm too old to think that $1,500 covers rent, but you know what I mean. What do you guys think? Harley, what do you think?
I think YouTube pays more for that, but
you'll be surprised. By the way, it's about what was it? The CPM is $5. In most situations, more likely $3. The CPM, so that's for every 1,000 views someone will get, they get about $3 to $5. So that means that even this video won't even make me enough to get a coffee. So won't get me enough to give me 2 cents. So and I make no money on the video, but the way you know what I mean.
I thought it was completely different.
It feels that way, but
yes,
that's why we have
just like YouTube. If you have a sponsor, you have YouTube is giving you a platform to reach out to the world, right?
Yes.
So you spend 2 years building that, and after that, you have, let's say, 3,000 people that are really into JavaScript following you, right? You might then go to a vendor that wants to reach these 3,000 people and say, hey, let's make a deal. And now sponsors come into the video, and you might be showcasing a software to develop or something. That's the same thing with Blender. Blender has now production companies that do movies and advertisement using this free software. And free means that they don't have to pay the $5,000 that Autodesk charged a year for Maya, right? Which is our competitor. And now they do mostly the same thing. So they contribute to this fund to build the project further and making sure that they can keep having the same workflow.
I agree. Imagine this. So this is an article I'm going to paste in the chat of this conversation. But there. Oh, I can't. Yes, I can. The what's amazing is a couple of npm packages decided to try this out. One of them being the famous Log Rocket, which is surprised because it's a paid service. I'm sorry. Pardon me. My apologies. It was not Log Rocket, but if you installed certain other projects, the moment you did npni, an ad would come up there, and the advertiser that said, "Cool, I'm in," to whatever you were installing that it was doing was Log Rocket. So it wasn't Log Rocket that was advertising; that was simply the ad was showing case. And npm quickly banned it so that you were not allowed to do this. You were not able to go npni and see an ad. And so I think we unless npm allows it, that might not happen. And I don't know how well, an ad would show up in npni. I certainly wouldn't want it if I install React on my project to have an ad by React on my website. That certainly would be out of line. But yeah, I think that could be something that could come up there. Yes. I like James. You call it FloridaJS. I appreciate it.
Hello, FloridaJS.
Yes.
Finally got it.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that.
Hello,
So that was SpongeBob. That was
Yeah.
SpongeBob saying hello there. So bless you. All right.
Hello,
problem.
FloridaJS.
Nice, James.
Has
I
three-
love it.
It has 3 different records.
So Damian, we never answered Steve's question. Does having paid versions of open source software actually solve the problems of open source?
Well, it would be. I love it. I've seen somewhere it's the exact same copy. There used to be this iPhone app that was free, and if you wanted, you would upgrade to the $4.99 one, and it was the exact same app, and it was very transparent. That was essentially giving them a donation through the Apple App Store membership way. So you did not upgrade and all of a sudden get new features. You literally got nothing. So it was not freemium. It was through the donations. I've never seen it really work. I remember, I'm old enough to remember shareware, which was this software you kind of got for free. And then all of a sudden you could send in some licenses. And then the joke is people pulling out floppy disks, is how long ago, or CDs that show that they paid for it. Zoom or Doom, I think, was one of them, where literally the software was free. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you could buy a license of it, but you would get nothing new with it. It was just you going, I support these people, and I don't see that continuing. So I don't think that kind of business line worked. So I don't know what the answer to that is. What do you all think? Should we start paying for, software? Should we have 2 versions of React? One will be paid for when we don't, and we don't get anything new when we pay for it? Or should there be like that? Should there be there are software out there? There's something to do with for React. I don't remember what it was, and the next version was paid for, but the prior version was always free. So if you wanted the latest of this particular, it was a library for React. I'm not sure what it was for. You had to pay for it to get that. So if you wanted the latest, greatest, you paid for it. And then eventually, slowly afterwards, like movies coming to Netflix, it would be free.
So Steve actually, I guess
Sorry.
Steve just clarified in Slack. He meant like non-open source software, like only having paid, like using paid software. Does that solve the problems of open source? I hope I'm doing you justice, Steve.
Also, Todd, in Slack, can you share me Steve's email or some way? I'm going to go and make sure on Zoom that we'll figure out why he can't get back in. I'll contact Zoom.
Well, it may just be that his internet kicked him off or something. Steve,
But
do
he
you
says
know
he
why
can't
he
get
can't
back
get
in.
in Zoom? He just said, "Hey, I got kicked from the meeting at the beginning and have been watching on YouTube." So didn't say he couldn't get in.
Okay. Tell me if you can't get in, just to email me and I'll contact Zoom and I'll ask him what's going on. Paid software. Emily, you ready to cash out? You're the rich one here with all your fancy jobs. So
Oh, you made me cancel my database and undo all that from AWS. So no bills.
Don't do that.
You showed me the billing dashboard.
Oh, so he's saying that Zoom actually gave him a message saying he got booted. So
Okay.
Going off of the question he had. Oh, sorry, Todd. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Paid. I have thought about that too, because it's all these 7-day trials for my new company, and like it's such a problem getting access, permissions, and everything. So I've just been using these free trials, but like all these paid softwares are probably used less, and they, the open source code libraries, whatever, just the open source project or whatever, is probably more what I'm just assuming based off of, the normal person who doesn't want to spend money. So I'm assuming that the open source libraries are used more often than the paid versions. Therefore, maybe, it's harder to integrate because a lot of companies want to save money.
I mean, it's not harder, right? It's pretty easy to install React. You guys do it fairly easily at the school. I don't think about it when it's doing it.
Paid services, like, is that? Yeah.
I mean, I think your point is, regardless of what it is, it's hard to or easy regardless of whether it's paid or not. I don't think there's any combination of things, other than what Joel mentioned a little bit earlier, which is that, let me go back here. Well, Steve's there. Steve
is in the house, so hopefully he can maybe give us a
Can you hear
more specific
answers.
More specifics on this question.
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Well, absolutely.
Well, I was thinking like making it open source, it gives it more access to a wider demographic, like people who are just trying to learn software engineering by themselves, like self-taught, software engineers, or like just anyone who's trying to do that. And it gives them a chance to put their name out there if they didn't get they don't have like a college background or anything like that. And like, I feel like if we kept it with a paid, like behind a paywall, and like some people, can't afford, if people can't afford it, then it would just limit who can like find or write the next, I don't know, Facebook code or something. I feel like it just limits the growth in knowledge that we have as a community. So
no question about it. You're absolutely right. And open source allows us to do a bunch of different things. It allows us to experiment, and it allows us to, for you all to come in there and saying, I know this, and so therefore the team might come in there, and for me to come in as an architect and say, we're going to be using this, and this the company is like, what? And it's only because I was able to play with it, test it out, maybe work it in my last company, and that's a domino effect, never ending for that. Steve, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the Zoom. Arlie, I think you have a great point. We do want to make it free, but the whole issue of like, if we do somehow contribute to these open source people, they will have time for doing that.
And
I
it
guess
depends on oh, I'm sorry. You were saying something?
To clarify, or to make it an easier, or not easier question to answer, but what's the option?
I don't know. You tell us, Steve. In other words, what are we? What are our options
if we don't use open source software? What are we going to do?
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Steve. You're right, Steve. I mean, there was that famous case originally why it wasn't why Linux started, but what Linux was following is the GNU project, which was trying to say, unlike Bill Gates at this time, was very famous in San Francisco. He was in San Francisco at the time, not in what eventually became Washington, which was, we should give money to developers, and developers should only make money. Make money, not just contribute to things, and we shouldn't just use everybody else's stuff as it willy-nilly. But the question is now, Linux became part of that, and we have all phones that if you have an iPhone, this is not the case, but in everywhere else, we have phones based upon the fact that someone just said, yes, let's contribute the software and build upon everybody else's, stand on everybody else's shoulders until eventually we reach the skyscraper, right?
I feel like if they, I guess this is like a youngin opinion, but like if they treated those, I don't know what to call it, but those places as in the same way they treat social media, like when you start gaining a certain following or when you start gaining a certain amount of downloads, you should start getting supported by the website, because you're bringing traffic into that website, and like people are downloading your code and it's considered good because a lot of people are, downloading it and using it. So at some point they should take care of their contributors and like do that. Or it could be like I think we were talking about it before, to have like a donate button or a contribute button on that person's profile. I feel
Absolutely.
like it created it, like in a more, I guess, modern social media type of way, it would alleviate some of that.
I agreed, and I think GitHub has tried to do something about it. I don't, there are several instances of program. One particular instance, I'm not sure it was the Faker guy. I want to say it was that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and he was saying he literally had a fire. Again, the story's okay. He literally had a fire, and the only thing was in his possessions, the $40 he had on his wallet, and that's it, because he didn't have anything else because he had lost everything. If that's true, how horrible. He also was having a hard time getting hired, and how silly of that for someone who is building the software that's being downloaded 2.5 million times a week. How in the world is that happening? But I'm not sure if it was the Faker guy, but it was other ones who had complained about this in the past, and it was brought forward as, I'm not sure if they have a donate button. I'm not too sure, as we saw a little bit earlier, an example of a project we all know, Sample APIs, doesn't automatically have a donate button. It maybe GitHub should instantly put it in there, and then Jeremy would have a surprise. Oh, there's been a donation of $2. Do you want to convert it from crypto to your cash, or we will send it to your Visa card, or how you get that money could be insignificant. Like, Jeremy might go, don't worry about it, GitHub, keep the $2, cool. But he wakes up and it's public, it's being used by all the schools around the world, and all of a sudden he's like, wow, I just got $2,000 a month. Okay, now let's set up some way to receive that cash. So, like you said, let's instantly put in a pay contribute button everywhere, and allow people to contribute 2 cents, allow people to contribute $2, and then just say, kind of like we used to have with Google AdSense, which would put the ads on our websites. We would have to ramp up. It's still the case, ramped up to $100. So during that whole time, now Google never took that money off, but then, 2 or 3 years later, it would slowly build up to $100, and then they would contact you and say, okay, I have a $100 bill to send you a check. Where do I send the check? Right? Or do you want to hand your credit card? And, and so it was an easy decision for me to make when it was $100. And it was an easier one when back in the day when I was making $2,000 a month from this website that had all this stuff and all that. And you're right, there was no thinking about it. Well, there was quite a bit of work that I had to do, but you're right, that could be an answer. Donate button. And I think GitHub,
I think you have to set it up. You have to set it per project right now on GitHub.
You're right, Steve. And we found that with Sample APIs here. You're right. So what do you think? I mean, should it be? We're getting a little late, so we can let people go. But we should we ask GitHub altogether? You know, just make a button, and then set a limit. I mean, you know, it's just money, right? If I have 2 cents there for the next 2 years, and then all of a sudden someone contributes $4, and I finally get to the $4 threshold, save the money until then. I'm not going to complain too much about it, right? I'm not going to complain that, you know, GitHub had to keep those 2 cents for 2 years. Who cares? I get the money eventually, right? And if there's an unlimited time, then that's fine. And then the ones like Faker that get 2.5 million, they will probably get nice $300 a month, which is great. Pays all my phone bills and telephone bills and TV bills. Maybe they get $2,000 a month. And like you said early, in the example of you, Jeremy's his favorite thing, he gets something to the order of $17,000 a month. Now we're talking Todd money, right? Now we're talking, you know, what Esteban makes in a month. You know what I mean? What this guy makes in a year. So you know, it's a wonderful. Now the Vue.js, if you guys use it, it's great. The Vue.js guy is set for life, and he should be. He's a single person with some help from other ones that has contributed so much to this. So we all want him to contribute, but we have to do something about it. And I think we have to figure out different ways other than expect a billionaire to give him money. This is not the case. He's getting small bits of pieces from different people. But you're right.
Based on that, I have a couple of suggestions. First of all, are we talking about startup companies?
Everything.
Okay. So why don't on they want to get paid for the open source code?
Nobody. No, it's just a question of should we contribute to the React people? They don't need it, but maybe we're like, we use it so much. Should your favorite thing is Postgres? Should you give a little bit of money to it, or should you expect them to be like
Postgres?
Yes.
But what about like setting a time frame of how long you're using the open source and charge them by that, or charge them by how much data they're storing using that, or
how about like a non-profit business model? How about the Patreon thing? Like there's a value exchange. For some people will be more valuable than others, right? Maybe $5 subscription, because I really care about this project and how this is evolving. And maybe it's us not being able to communicate with the rest of the world. Maybe the issue is that open source is only for us, developers, right? And that might be the issue. Like we have to, maybe we have to create a platform that showcase different open source projects and get people involved in the world wouldn't look like it looks today without like open source. We were talking about Android before, but Apple is also based on a Unix kernel. Unix is famous, Darwin. So even the big giants use open source, but we need that in the industry. So how we protect that, right? I don't know. A Patreon donation thing with access to the core theme or new feature might be a way to do it with a better communication.
Or maybe you want to do a PR. I mean, you want to clone the repo and do a PR. Maybe he can charge you to do something like that, to integrate with his code, change his code because it's open source, and he'll get payment on that. Or
that'd be good.
Yeah.
And going back to Esteban's mention about using Patreon to contribute to the project for their services, I think that's a really good idea. Instead of just charging people like on GitHub, your open source project. Like I have my own project that I had published like last year, and it's called Florida Iguana Tracker. If you go onto that site, It's what I have right now. It's what I posted in the chat. It's called Florida Iguana Tracker. Let me type it in. And I would like to keep it running so long as it pays for the services itself. Like right now, it's deployed on Azure and it's using the services like Azure Blob Storage for keeping the images, as well as keeping the database for tracking those, for keeping records of those images.
All right. So that is a good reason to to help with the team and everything. So
And Damian,
okay. Yeah.
Does AWS charge for S3 or just to?
It does a very small, tiny bit amount. So as S3 specifically, it's the best way to host websites or search.sh or the Google web pages. Well, for S3, yeah, for it's the same as blobs from Azure and all that. The hosting of the images, websites or things like that are super cheap. You're probably, Todd has told you several different times, it'd be like a $3. I have literally paid Azure or Google several times 2 cents, and I have a lot of things hosted there, and a couple of other cents for Azure and things like that.
Yeah, it's very cheap.
Indeed. Talking about getting paid, it's time for you guys to get paid. So if you guys want to join me here at win.floridajs.com.
Ooh, I'm in need for. Oh, maybe I'll be in need for like a refresh on my ReSharper.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So James is giving it away. If you go to win.floridajs.com, don't go to the URL I'm looking at this one right here. There you go. And so this win. Oh, I just realized I zoomed in my. Let's do this. Boom. Oh, that didn't help. Win.floridajs.com, just win.floridajs.com. And if you go there, you'll get a ticket automatically, even if you refresh several times. I got you. There were some people that had figured out how to hack my system. No, sir, not anymore. So in there, you got a ticket. We have our famous JetBrains giveaway. Any software JetBrains has, limited to only $3,000 or less. So most of the software is like $200, $300 or less. But anyways, $3,000 or less. You're welcome to. You're not any kind of. So they have started to sell some services. So that's not included, but definitely it is one of the things that we want to do there. If you want to know what this isn't on my GitHub. You do not need to contribute to this open source project, which is sitting on my GitHub. But if you go to the win.floridajs.com right now, you can put in your ticket and all that. Does everybody have a ticket, or is there people that are? And feel free to chat on the chat or speak out if you don't have a ticket yet. You can also speak out if you have multiple ones, but I would suggest you don't. And I won't tell you how to get multiple ones, because if you refresh, you'll still have only the ones you have there. All right, let's pick a winner. Look down at your phone or look up at the screen and you see some fancy CSS animations. Wow, that was impressive. Thank you, Esteban. I saw a golf clap and I appreciate that very much. Who is ticket number 6?
I believe that's me again.
Oh, I love it, James. I love it. And you know what? I am a happy man, so I'm going to give away 2. That's right. 2 days, a special day. James, you got it. You have a license for it. And number 1 also has a license. So James, I'm not forgetting you. Contact me on Slack. You will get a license. Who is number 1?
Try another winner. That's me.
All right. Another winner. I appreciate that you playing. I love that everybody's trying out my software. It looks like it's Emily. Emily, you have won. That's right, John. Tell them what he won. Thanks, Frank. It's won some software from JetBrains. If you go to jetbrains.com, you can find fantastic software. Emily and James both have that fantastic software. Go ahead and contact me and I'll give you that software. There's some amazing things. ReSharper is one of the best ones. Storm and things of that are the other ones. You always get some. I think every one of you guys have one. If you haven't, let me know. And if you know me, let me know. I may have other licenses that I'm not going to talk about right here. So thank you so much for everybody to join us. I want to really thank you all for this conversation. I really didn't know what I was going to, what it was going to be like and things like that. So I'm very, very glad that you guys are all here with me. And come every first of the month. First user of the month is 6:30. We try to get together. We do give away some licenses away. Sometimes we give other things. When we have sponsors, we had one scheduled, but they had a last minute cancellation, so they couldn't join us. We had other prizes to give away. Okay, all right. We have some sign words, something to do with the West Coast or East Coast and all that. So I think I know that. That's the alphabet. Oh, all right. Thank you so much. I